Hey, everybody. Let's talk for a minute about potential flashpoints. And what I mean by the word flashpoint in this particular context is a moment when it is possible that violence will happen or will accelerate. We have some flashpoints that we know about. Debates are an example. Every time that there is a large scale, highly visible debate, that's something that might set off pressure. More than that, court rulings. If there is a court case involving somebody who's in political office or running for political office or a member of their family, then the day that the court ruling is made, or the day that a court ruling is made about an election dispute, that's another possibility. That's a day when people are going to be really ramped up. They're going to have strong feelings happening. Election day itself is a flashpoint. It's a day when we know that everybody is paying a lot of attention to the political situation and they're going to be having really strong feelings. The day that the announcement of the results happens. So after an election, the point when the election is actually called. Another day is inauguration day, the day that a new president is actually being sworn into office. And then on top of these, and of course, those are just a few examples, there are more, there are unknown flashpoints. So there are certain days or moments when we can expect that there's going to be a culmination of passion about the political situation. But then there are other moments when we might be surprised that something will happen that we were not expecting, and then that has the potential to really cause violence. Flashpoints are tricky because they are not necessarily violent. They are just moments when passions get really high and when we are having an experience of everything that we have believed all along is suddenly heightened. The question is, what have we done before that, and what can we do during that moment to make it less likely that the intensity of feeling remains intensity of feeling and doesn't actually translate into violence? If people are taking actions, let's make sure that they are nonviolent actions rather than violent actions in a moment like this. When a flashpoint moment comes, when that happens, it is super easy to want to throw up our walls and defend ourselves. And this goes back, we've talked about this before, to just the way that our brains are programmed. When we feel threatened or angry or aggressive or anything else, we have a tendency to want to surround ourselves with people who agree with us, and that feels really safe. And then we just throw up the walls and we say, nobody else is allowed in. And again, it's a safety technique. This is what feels safe in that super tense political moment. But of course, when we're trying to prevent election violence, the act of surrounding myself with people who are like me and then throwing up my walls and saying everybody else out, that's me basically naming everyone else as an enemy, which politically they might be, but in terms of violence prevention, they are not. Most of them are not. It's the 98, 99% of people who don't want violence. And we are all on the same side as long as we are prepared to say we are all on the same side where violence is concerned. So how do I actually show that? In the flashpoint moment, how do I demonstrate and work for nonviolence while at the same time, I'm not making political compromises? It's not like I'm going to say I don't believe what I believe, or I'm going to become less passionate about my politics. One of the things that I can do is straw man arguments. So a straw man, as opposed, okay, let's talk about this. Straw man arguments, which some of you learned about in school, is the idea of I'm going to tell a story about what the other side believes, and I'm going to give the worst possible explanation for it. So I'm going to give a really flimsy logic, and I'm going to talk about it as if they are intentionally doing something that's morally questionable, and then I'll talk about how wrong that is. So basically, I'm setting up the other side and saying they believe X, Y, and Z, and that's terrible. And then I look really good by comparison because I am making the worst possible version of their case, and then I'm shooting that case down. That's an easy thing to do, and I can look like I'm super smart, especially to people who are on my own side. But to straw man an argument is actually starting to make that dismissal case against the person on the opposite side of the political spectrum. We don't even have to consider their point of view. It is so ridiculous, and this is me ridiculing, it is so ridiculous. They're just stupid. And these are the kinds of seeds that can lead to that dehumanizing, which can make violence easier. So I'm going to do the opposite of this, and I'm going to steelman arguments. I may still shoot the arguments down. I might still say, I disagree and here is why, but I'm going to give the best possible case. I'm going to assume that the other side is coming from a place of good intentions and they are making the strongest possible logical argument. And if I really believe that what I believe is the best alternative, then it will hold up to the steelman challenge. I can make the best possible case for the other side and still win if I genuinely believe that my side is in the right. So I'm going to try to practice that, especially in a flashpoint moment, so that I am demonstrating, no, I'm not willing to dehumanize, I'm not willing to ridicule, I'm not willing to dismiss, but they're still wrong. And let me explain to you why. Another thing that we might be tempted to do at a flashpoint is pounce on the rumors that we're hearing, the worst possible things about the other side and the best possible things about our side. And, I don't know if this is true, but I heard da 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 da. I struggle with this one because it happens so often. In fact, almost all the time. And it's very often people who are picking up on things that they've heard from the national media. I've had the experience of somebody saying to me, well, did you know that this candidate said this last night? And actually, yeah, okay, literally the candidate did say that. But I looked it up and I looked for the full context of the quote. And it turns out that in this particular case, what the person was saying was not what everybody is saying they were saying. So in context, the quote was actually not completely unreasonable, and it wasn't evil, and it wasn't ridiculous. And then the person that I was talking to when I pointed this out, if you look at this in context, it turns out the candidate was actually saying, and the person saying, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, this person is a terrible, okay. If you believe that somebody is wrong or is acting out of ill intent or whatever else, that's fine. Believe that. Some people are wrong and some people are acting out of ill intent, but let's tell the truth. It is incredibly important, because if I'm pouncing on a rumor and I'm magnifying something that isn't true in order to make a moral case about my opposition, then I'm undermining myself. And that's also me, again, dismissing, ridiculing, otherizing people who are following the candidates on the other side, because I'm saying this person is just unqualified evil, and I'm going to look for every opportunity to say that. Well, okay, but this is me setting things up again as if the other side is just stupid and following somebody who's evil. I have to be scrupulously truthful, because otherwise I don't have any credibility. And I'm adding again to the sort of uncertainty, polarization, extremism, environment of lying that is brewing violence. The same is true in reverse. If I'm telling stories about my side's virtue that are not strictly true, I am contributing to that situation of mutual extremism and violence, because I'm not speaking with integrity. So if my side is doing something wonderful and I want to tell the story about the wonderful thing we're doing, that's fine. Go for it. But when my side is actually doing something that's kind of morally complex, or we're making mistakes, and I'm going to leave everything out except the most virtuous possible version of the story, that's a problem. Because again, I'm undermining my own integrity. I'm contributing to an environment where we don't have agreement on facts and reality. And that is leading to that kind of mutual extremism, otherizing thing that starts to give us violence. Let's go back to the idea of these flashpoint moments, the big moments, the election day, inauguration day, the decisions about court cases, all of those little moments when things happen that are going to escalate the general temperature in the country. And suddenly we're going to be all that much more hard feeling, that much more passionate about our pre-existing positions. This is the moment when I can reach out to the other side. When I can steel man arguments, when I can refuse to pass on rumors, when I double check all of my facts, and then I can make direct contact with people who are on the opposite side of the political spectrum. I call somebody that I have made a point of getting to know in the weeks and months leading up to that, and just say, hey, how you doing today? Things are getting kind of rough out there. Are you okay? How are you feeling about the situation? I'm feeling kind of nervous about what's going on. Again, we can totally disagree, but what is the value of the reaching out and making that connection? Especially if this person lives in my local community. When I'm reaching out and making that connection, I'm saying, I recognize your humanity in this moment. I know that there is a hard thing going on. I disagree with you about what we're going to hope is happening at the end of the day, but I am still reaching out to you because you are still my neighbor and we still live in the same community. And I want to check on you and make sure that we have that connection. This is us undermining the kinds of forces that might potentially lead to violence because we have a person-to-person relationship and we are actively practicing humanizing each other, even at the most difficult moment. We do not, by the way, when we make this contact with each other, have to discuss politics. It's probably not the most helpful thing to do in that moment. It might be a 5 or 10 minute conversation in which we talk about something like, did you notice that the tulips are growing? How are your grandchildren? My dog ran away and came back, and I just wanted to tell you that the dog is home. Whatever the thing is, it's the human connection that matters most, and the political piece of it, we already know that we disagree. So it's not probably something we need to be talking about in the moment when temperatures are already really high. We have talked over and over about things like the catalyst, the incident, the shock, the piece of election violence that is likely to happen. It is very unlikely, although it's certainly possible, and I hope this is what happens, but it's unlikely that we're going to make it through this election cycle without some additional incidents of election violence. But when that happens, I do not have to react violently to that catalyst. The catalyst is more likely to come on a flashpoint kind of day when the temperatures get really high. And so, how am I going to respond? I'm going to steel man. I'm going to not pass on the rumors. I'm going to double check all my facts, be scrupulously truthful, and make direct contact with people on the other side. None of this is about political compromise. This is about passionate disagreement without becoming violent. It's about making sure that we get through the election cycle without degenerating to violence. Next time we talk, we're going to move into a new idea about building a team of people who can work together to prevent election violence.